The clinic smelled faintly of disinfectant and old magazines, the kind of place where time always seemed to slow down. He sat on the vinyl bench, one hand resting on the leash, the other fishing through his pocket for the small biscuit he always carried. It was their ritual after every appointment. A treat, a smile, a quiet promise that everything was fine. He held it out casually, barely looking. "Come on," he murmured, already imagining the familiar crunch, the wagging tail, the soft eyes lighting up. But the dog didn't move. Instead, he leaned closer to his human's leg, pressing his shoulder in, breathing shallow and fast. His ears flattened. His eyes flicked from the treat to the man's face, then away. A low whine slipped out, barely audible, but it sent a strange chill through the room. He laughed awkwardly, trying again. "Hey buddy, it's your favorite." The dog turned his head completely this time, refusing to even look at it. His body trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, something urgent. He nudged the man's hand down, then placed a paw gently on his knee, as if asking him to stop. Confusion crept in, followed by worry. Dogs didn't do this. Not him. Not with that treat. Around them the clinic hummed softly, papers rustling, distant footsteps, a door closing somewhere down the hall. Yet in that small moment, it felt as if everything had narrowed to the space between a man and a dog who knew something he didn't. Moments later, everything changed. Before we continue, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching dog stories. And tell me, where are you watching from? The clinic was quiet in the way medical places often are. Not silent, just softened. A low hum from the lights overhead. The faint squeak of shoes down a hallway. Somewhere a printer sighed and went still again. Late afternoon light leaned through the tall windows, pale and forgiving, catching dust in the air and turning it gold. He sat on the vinyl bench near the wall. Worn blue. Slightly cracked. Cool through his jeans. His hand rested loosely on the leash. The dog sat at his feet, close enough that their knees touched. Close enough to feel. This was familiar. Comforting. They had done this dozens of times over the years. Annual checkups. Minor worries. Quick reassurances. The dog's head was level. Ears relaxed. Tail tucked neatly along the floor. Not stiff, not wagging, just present. Calm. He breathed out slowly and leaned back, eyes drifting to the framed posters on the wall. Diagrams of spines. A smiling golden retriever with perfect teeth. A faded flyer reminding people to check for ticks. He reached into his jacket pocket out of habit. His fingers brushed crinkled paper. The treat. Small. Brown. Soft enough to break easily. The dog's favorite. He smiled without really thinking about it. Every visit ended the same way. A treat. A quiet celebration of normalcy. He lowered his hand. "All right," he said softly. "Good boy." The dog didn't move. First he didn't notice. He was already expecting the sound. The small shuffle forward, the gentle sniff, the careful taking of food. The way the dog always paused before eating, as if asking permission even now. But nothing happened. He glanced down. The dog was still sitting. Still close. Too close. His shoulder leaned lightly against the man's leg. More pressure than usual. Not pushing. Just anchoring. The dog's eyes flicked toward the treat. Then away. His ears shifted back. Not flat. Just lowered. A thin sound escaped his throat. Not a bark. Not even a whine. More like a breath that caught on the way out. He chuckled under his breath. "Hey," he said. "You earned it." He moved the treat a little closer. The dog turned his head fully to the side. Refused to look. The leash tightened slightly as the dog adjusted his position, angling his body so it blocked the man's knee. His paw lifted and rested gently against the man's leg. Not begging. Stopping. The smile faded. "That's new," he murmured. The dog's breathing was shallow now. Fast. Controlled. His tail stayed still. Not tucked in fear. Not wagging with excitement. Stillness intentional. The man straightened a little. "Buddy." He lowered the treat again, closer to the dog's nose this time. The dog leaned away. Not sharply. Not panicked. Just enough. Then he nudged the man's wrist downward with his snout, firm but careful, as if correcting something that didn't belong there. A quiet whine followed. The man's chest tightened. "Hey, it's okay." He said it automatically. The words came before the thought. The dog didn't respond to the tone the way he usually did. His eyes stayed fixed, not on the room, not on the people passing by, but on the man's face. Watching. Reading. The leash trembled faintly as the dog shifted closer still, pressing his side against the man's shin. The contact was grounding, heavy in a way that felt deliberate, protective. The man swallowed. A strange unease crept in, slow and unwelcome. Dogs had moods. Dogs had off days. But this wasn't that. This was purposeful. Around them life continued. A door opened. A woman laughed quietly down the hall. Metal instruments clinked somewhere behind a wall. Normal sounds. The kind that usually told him everything was fine. He pulled the treat back and let it rest in his palm. The dog relaxed just slightly. The whine stopped. His breathing eased by a fraction. The man stared at him now, really looking. The subtle tremor in the dog's flank. The tension held low in his shoulders. The way his ears kept adjusting to sounds no one else seemed to notice. "What is it?" the man asked quietly. The dog didn't answer, of course. He just leaned in closer. Placed both paws on the man's foot now, gentle pressure, grounding him to the floor. His head lifted, nose nearly touching the man's knee. "Stay." The man felt a ripple of emotion move through him. Confusion first, then worry, then something deeper. Trust. This dog had never refused that treat. Not once. Not after long days. Not after pain. Not after fear. He tucked the treat back into his pocket. The dog exhaled. A long, relieved breath. The man rested his hand on the dog's head, fingers sinking into warm fur. He felt the steady beat beneath his palm. "You're trying to tell me something," he whispered. The dog's ears flicked. The door at the end of the hallway opened, and the veterinarian stepped out, clipboard in hand. "All right," she said gently. "We're ready for you." The man rose slowly. The dog stood with him. Close. Alert. As they took their first step forward, the dog hesitated, just for a moment, and glanced back at the bench they were leaving behind. Then he moved again. Carefully. Staying between the man and the world. And without knowing why, the man felt certain of one thing. This visit was not routine anymore. Not at all. The exam room was smaller than the waiting area, quieter somehow. The door closed with a soft click behind them, sealing out the hallway noise. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something warmer beneath it. Fur, familiar and alive. A metal table sat against the wall, covered with white paper that crinkled when touched. The man guided the dog inside. "Up you go," he said gently. The dog hesitated. Not refusal. Not fear. Just a pause. His paws stayed planted on the floor, weight centered low, muscles tight beneath his coat. His eyes moved slowly around the room, then returned to the man's face. Ears angled forward now, alert. "It's okay," the man murmured, patting the table. Normally that was all it took. The dog jumped up with a quiet huff, tail giving a polite wag, ready to endure whatever came next. Today he didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer to the man, shoulder brushing his leg again. Anchoring. The veterinarian noticed immediately. "Well, hello there," she said, her voice calm and practiced. "Someone's feeling extra attached today." She smiled, but her eyes stayed observant. The man nodded, trying to match her ease. "Yeah," he said. "He's been a little off." The dog finally climbed onto the table, movements careful, controlled. He sat rather than lying down, posture upright, watchful. His tail hung still off the edge, not tucked, not loose. The vet washed her hands at the sink. "So," she said lightly, "what brings you both in?" "Just a checkup," the man replied. "Nothing unusual." He almost believed it. The vet stepped closer, running her hands gently along the dog's shoulders, down his back. The dog allowed it, but his eyes never left the man. His ears flicked at every sound, the sink shutting off, a drawer opening, footsteps beyond the wall. When the vet reached for the otoscope, the dog stiffened slightly. "Easy," the man whispered, resting his hand on the dog's chest. The dog leaned into that touch immediately. "Press closer." The vet paused. "He usually okay with this?" she asked. "Always," the man said. "He's patient." The word felt strange now. The vet continued slowly, checking ears, eyes, teeth. The dog tolerated it, but something in his posture stayed guarded. He shifted his weight each time the vet leaned too close to the man, as if tracking distance. The man reached into his pocket without thinking. The treat again. It was a reflex, a small reward to ease the moment. He held it out low, close to the dog's nose. "Here," he said softly. "Just a little." The dog froze. His nostrils flared as he smelled it. For a brief moment, his eyes flickered with something familiar, recognition, want. Then his ears flattened. Not in fear. In decision. He turned his head sharply away. A low whine escaped his throat, more insistent this time. His paw lifted and pressed against the man's wrist, pushing the hand down. "Stop." The vet straightened. "Oh," she said quietly. The man pulled his hand back, heart beginning to thud harder now. "He won't take it," he said, almost apologetically. "That's not like him." The dog shifted closer, placing his body between the man and the vet's outstretched hand. He wasn't aggressive. His movements were measured, protective without threat. The vet's expression changed, curiosity replacing casual calm. "Can I?" she asked, gesturing gently toward the treat. The man nodded. She held it out. The dog glanced at it once. Then he looked at the man. And whined again. Longer. Softer. His body trembled, a faint vibration beneath his fur, like a wire pulled too tight. The vet withdrew her hand. "Interesting," she murmured. The room felt smaller now. The man's mouth was dry. "He's never refused food," he said. "Not even when he was sick as a puppy." The dog sat down abruptly, planting his weight, eyes locked on the man. His breathing quickened again, shallow and fast. His tail remained still. He leaned forward and rested his forehead lightly against the man's thigh. A plea. The man swallowed hard and rested both hands on the dog's neck, thumbs brushing behind his ears. "It's okay," he said again, but the words felt thin. The vet didn't interrupt. She watched. "Listen. Has he been acting differently at home?" she asked after a moment. The man hesitated. "Not dramatically," he said. "Just little things. Following me more. Sitting closer. Sleeping by the door instead of his bed." The dog exhaled slowly at the sound of his voice, tension easing just a fraction. The vet nodded. "Any changes in your routine?" she asked. "Diet? Schedule?" "No." The word came too quickly. The vet didn't push. Instead, she crouched slightly to the dog's level, keeping distance. "Hey buddy," she said softly. The dog didn't look at her. He stayed focused on the man. The vet straightened again, thoughtful now. "Well," she said gently, "let's take our time." The man nodded, though his chest felt tight. He slid the treat back into his pocket again. The dog relaxed just a little. The whine faded. His ears lifted halfway. The man felt a chill run through him. Not cold exactly, but awareness. This wasn't stubbornness. This wasn't anxiety. This was intent. The dog was choosing refusal. Choosing vigilance. As the vet moved toward the door to retrieve something from the hall, the dog shifted again, placing himself squarely in front of the man's knees. He sat there, solid and unmoving. Guarding. The man looked down at him, his throat tight. "What do you know?" he whispered. "That I don't." The dog didn't answer. He just stayed. And in that quiet exam room, surrounded by the ordinary tools of care, the first real understanding began to form. Something was wrong. And the dog had known it first. They left the clinic an hour later with nothing definitive. No urgent alarms. No dramatic words. Just a suggestion. Keep an eye on him, the vet had said gently. Dogs sense things we can't always explain. The man nodded, thanked her, smiled the way people do when they don't want worry to show. Outside, the late afternoon had softened into early evening. The sky was pale blue, streaked with thin clouds that looked brushed on rather than real. A light breeze carried the smell of warm asphalt and distant trees. The dog walked close at his side, closer than usual. His shoulder brushed the man's leg with every step, not accidental, measured, as if he were keeping count. It's okay, the man said quietly, more to himself than the dog. Just a weird day. The dog's ears flicked back at the sound of his voice. He didn't look up. He kept moving, steady, alert. The car ride home was quiet. The dog sat upright in the back seat instead of curling into his usual spot. His eyes stayed fixed forward, watching the road through the gap between the seats. Every stoplight brought a shift of weight. Every turn made his muscles tense, then release. The man noticed. He told himself it was nothing. At home, the familiar smells greeted them. Old wood, clean laundry, the faint trace of coffee from the morning. The dog paused at the doorway, scanning the room before stepping inside. You're fine, the man said lightly, setting his keys down. See? Same place. The dog didn't go to his bed. Instead, he followed the man into the kitchen, then the living room, then back down the hallway. Wherever the man went, the dog stayed close enough to touch. That night, the man cooked a simple dinner. The dog sat at the edge of the kitchen, watching every movement. Not begging, not hopeful, just present. When the man dropped a small piece of food accidentally, the dog didn't move. The sound echoed too loudly in the quiet room. The man frowned. All right, he said. What's going on with you? The dog's tail gave a single slow wag, then stopped. Later, as the man sat on the couch, the dog positioned himself at his feet, facing outward. His head lifted at every sound from outside. A passing car, a door closing down the street, distant voices. Guard mode. The man sighed and rubbed his temples. He was tired. Work had been long. The appointment had stretched his nerves thinner than he wanted to admit. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The dog shifted immediately, stood, pressed his nose gently against the man's knee. The man opened his eyes. I'm okay, he said, reaching down. You don't have to babysit me. The dog didn't move away. Instead, he leaned in harder, placing his weight against the man's leg until the man had to steady himself. The pressure was grounding, intentional. The man laughed softly. You're being dramatic today. The word lingered in the air longer than he meant it to. The dog's ears flattened slightly. He lowered himself again, resting his chin on the man's foot. His eyes stayed open, unblinking, watching. That night, the man woke to a soft sound. A whine. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to pull him from sleep. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the streetlight through the curtains. The dog sat beside the bed, body upright, ears forward. What is it? The man whispered. The dog didn't bark. He stood and moved toward the door. Stopped. Looked back. The man sighed and swung his legs over the side of the bed. All right, he said quietly. Bathroom break. They walked down the hall together. The dog waited outside the bathroom door, facing the hallway instead of the room. When they returned, the dog didn't go back to his bed. He lay down across the doorway instead, blocking it. The man noticed. He hesitated, then shrugged it off. Suit yourself, he murmured. The next morning the man felt fine. A little tired. A slight pressure behind his eyes. Nothing unusual. He poured coffee. The dog sat at his feet, staring up at him. Relax, the man said. You're acting like something's wrong. The dog's ears flicked. His tail stayed still. When the man reached for his mug, his hand trembled slightly. He didn't notice. When he stood up, the room tilted for just a moment. The dog stood instantly, pressed against his leg. The man laughed it off. Guess I stood up too fast. He took a sip of coffee. The dog whimpered softly. That afternoon, the man tried to restore normalcy. They went for a walk. The weather was mild. The sidewalk warm beneath their feet. Birds called from somewhere in the trees. The dog walked stiffly now, stopping often to look up at the man's face. Each time the man reassured him. "I'm good," he said. "See? Walking. Talking." The dog didn't seem convinced. When they reached the park, the dog refused to move forward. He planted his feet. Leashed but unyielding. "Come on," the man said, tugging gently. The dog leaned back, body low, muscles engaged. No panic. Just resistance. "Hey," the man said, more sharply than he intended. "It's fine." The dog turned his head and looked directly at him. His eyes were wide, focused, urgent. The man felt irritation flare, brief and misplaced. "We do this every day," he said. "You're okay." He stepped forward. The dog moved with him, but stayed in front now, blocking the path, forcing the man to slow down. The man stopped. His chest felt tight. He frowned, hand lifting to rub at it. The dog whined louder now. The sound cut through the afternoon air. People glanced over. The man felt embarrassed. "All right," he muttered. "Home." They turned back. That evening the man sat quietly at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a glass of water he hadn't finished. His appetite was gone. The dog lay at his feet, head lifted, watching every breath. The man shook his head. "I don't get you today," he said softly. "You're worrying over nothing." The dog's tail thumped once. Slow. Heavy. As if in disagreement. The man leaned back and closed his eyes again. For just a second. And this time the world dimmed more than it should have. The dog stood. Alert. Unmoving. And somewhere beneath the man's calm dismissal, beneath the rational explanations he kept offering himself, a quiet truth waited. He was misreading the warning. And the dog knew it. The night settled in slowly. Not with darkness all at once, but in layers. The sky deepening outside the windows, the house growing quieter, the familiar creaks announcing that everything was where it should be. Everything except the dog. He didn't relax. Not when the lights dimmed. Not when the television murmured softly in the background. Not when the man stretched out on the couch and tried to convince himself the day had simply been long. The dog stayed upright. Sitting. Facing him. His ears shifted constantly, tracking sounds that barely registered. A car passing 2 streets away, the refrigerator cycling on, the faint hum of power lines outside. Each sound drew a response, a slight tightening, a recalibration. The man noticed. He pretended not to. "You're exhausting," he said quietly, attempting humor. "You know that." The dog's tail moved once, then stilled. The man stood to pour another glass of water. As he did, a wave of dizziness rose up fast enough to steal his breath. He stopped, gripped the counter, waited. The dog was there instantly, pressing his body against the man's leg, bracing him. His head lifted, eyes searching the man's face, nose flaring as if scent could explain what sight could not. "I'm fine," the man said, though his voice sounded thinner now. The dog didn't move away. He stayed pressed there until the man's breathing evened out again. Only then did the dog ease back, not far. Just enough to keep watch. The man carried his water to the couch and sat down carefully this time. The dog repositioned himself immediately. Closer. Between the man and the open space of the room. Blocking angles. Closing gaps. It was subtle but unmistakable. "You're not letting this go, are you?" the man murmured. The dog's ears flicked at the sound of his voice. He lowered himself but remained alert, head lifted, eyes never leaving the man's chest and face. Monitoring. That night sleep came in fragments. The man drifted in and out, awareness snagging on small things, the sound of the dog shifting position, the soft tap of claws on hardwood, the weight of a body settling against the bed. At one point he woke fully. The dog stood at the foot of the bed, rigid, staring at the doorway. "What is it?" the man whispered. The dog didn't answer. He didn't bark. He simply moved closer and placed his front paws gently on the mattress, leaning his weight forward, nose hovering near the man's chest. Listening. The man held his breath without realizing it. The dog stayed like that for several long seconds. Then he relaxed just enough to lie down again, body stretched across the man's feet, pinning him in place. As if to say, "Stay." Morning arrived gray and cool. The man woke with a dull ache behind his eyes and a heaviness in his limbs that felt unfamiliar. He sat up slowly, waiting for the room to steady. The dog was already awake, watching. "You're going to wear yourself out," the man said quietly. The dog stood and nudged his hand insistently. Not for affection, for attention. The man swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. The room swayed. The dog barked. Once. Sharp. Controlled. The sound startled the man. "Hey," he said. "Easy." But the dog didn't back off. He moved in front of the man, blocking his path to the door, body angled wide, stance solid. His tail was low but steady. His eyes locked onto the man's face with a focus that bordered on intensity. The man stopped short. "What are you doing?" he asked. The dog whined, a strained sound that vibrated through his chest. He stepped closer, forcing the man to pause. The man exhaled. "All right," he said. "All right." He sat back down on the edge of the bed. The dog relaxed immediately. Just a fraction. Later that morning, the man attempted a shower. The dog followed him into the bathroom and lay down directly in front of the shower door, facing outward. When the water turned on, the dog remained unmoving, ears tracking every change in sound. The steam fogged the mirror. The man leaned his forehead against the tile wall and closed his eyes. A strange fatigue pressed down on him, heavier than any tiredness he remembered. When he stepped out, towel wrapped around his waist, the dog stood at once and pressed his nose into the man's abdomen, sniffing deeply, then whining again. The man frowned. "That's enough," he said softly, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "You're making me nervous." The dog's response was immediate. He moved closer, closer still, until the man had to brace himself against the sink. The rest of the day passed in careful increments. The man moved slowly now, unconsciously adjusting his pace to the dog's insistence. He sat when the dog asked him to sit, paused when the dog blocked his path, rested when the dog leaned into him too firmly to ignore. The dog never relaxed fully, never played, never slept deeply. His vigilance was constant. By afternoon, the man felt it too. A pressure in his chest that came and went, a lightness in his head that made standing feel like effort. He tried to brush it off, telling himself he was dehydrated, stressed, overtired. The dog didn't accept those explanations. When the man reached for his phone, the dog nudged his hand away. When the man tried to stand, the dog blocked him. When the man ignored him, the dog whined. Not loud, not frantic, just enough to insist. Relentless. By evening, the man sat quietly on the couch, hands resting in his lap. The dog sat directly in front of him, staring. "You're serious," the man whispered. The dog's ears flicked forward. His tail thumped once. The man felt something shift inside him then. A crack in certainty, a loosening of denial. Maybe this wasn't nothing. Maybe this wasn't imagination or coincidence. The dog leaned forward and rested his head against the man's chest. "Listen." And this time the man didn't pull away. He stayed still. Let the moment stretch. Because the dog wasn't letting it go. And deep down, the man was beginning to understand why. The clinic looked different the second time. Not because anything had changed, the same windows, the same posters, the same low hum of fluorescent lights, but because the man noticed everything now. The smell felt sharper. The sounds louder. His body was tired in a way that went beyond sleep. Heavy. Slower to respond. Each step took intention. The dog walked beside him, posture tight, focus unbroken. They didn't sit in the waiting area this time. The receptionist glanced up, then down at the dog. Her smile softened. "Go right back," she said quietly. The exam room door closed behind them again. The dog immediately positioned himself in front of the man and sat, back straight, eyes alert. His ears moved constantly, tracking the room, the hallway, the man's breathing. The veterinarian entered a moment later. She stopped short. Not dramatically, just long enough to notice. "Well," she said gently, setting her clipboard down instead of holding it. "You came back." The man nodded. "I didn't plan to," he admitted. "He wouldn't let me, not really." The dog didn't look at her. He stayed focused on the man. The vet crouched slowly, careful not to crowd the space. "He's very tuned in," she said softly. The man let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "He hasn't stopped watching me," he said. "He won't eat, won't rest, won't leave me alone." The vet nodded, eyes thoughtful. "And how are you feeling?" she asked. The question landed heavier than he expected. "I'm fine," he said automatically, then hesitated. "Just tired." The dog shifted instantly, standing, moving closer to the man's knees. The vet noticed that too. "Let's not rush," she said. She didn't reach for any instruments, didn't gesture for the dog to get on the table. Instead, she pulled a stool closer and sat down, at eye level. The room seemed to quiet around that decision. She watched the dog for a long moment, the way his weight stayed forward, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked to the man's chest again and again. "Has he ever done this before?" she asked. "No," the man said. "Never." The dog let out a low, soft whine. The vet raised her hand slightly, palm open, not toward the dog, toward the man. "May I ask you something a little different?" she said. The man nodded. "Have you had any changes lately?" she asked. "Health, stress, sleep." The man shifted uncomfortably. "Nothing major," he said. "I've had headaches, some dizziness. But that's life, right?" The vet didn't respond right away. She leaned back slightly and exhaled. The dog's ears lifted. The vet reached out slowly, not to touch, just to indicate. "May I watch him a bit longer?" she asked. "Of course," the man said. They sat in silence. Not awkward. Intentional. The dog moved closer until his chest pressed lightly against the man's knee. His breathing synced with the man's, shallow but steady. His eyes stayed trained on the man's face, occasionally dropping to his chest, his hands. Listening. Monitoring. The vet's gaze softened. "You know," she said quietly, "we see this sometimes." The man looked up. "See what?" "Dogs responding to changes in their humans," she said. "Before machines do. Before symptoms make sense." The man frowned. "You think he thinks I'm sick?" The dog whined softly, as if answering. The vet tilted her head. "I think he knows something is different," she said. "And he's trying to keep you safe the only way he knows how." The room felt suddenly smaller. The man swallowed. "He won't take treats," he said. "He won't let me walk normally. He blocks me." The vet nodded. "That's not refusal," she said. "That's prioritization." The words landed gently, firmly. She stood then, but not to reach for equipment. She walked to the door and opened it partway. "Let me ask you something," she said, turning back. "When was your last physical?" The man hesitated. "A while," he admitted. "I don't really go unless something's wrong." The dog leaned in closer. The vet closed the door again. "Would you humor me?" she asked. "Let me check him one more time, and then I'd like you to sit for a moment." She moved carefully now, checking the dog's vitals. His heart rate was elevated but steady. His posture remained tense but compliant. "He's healthy," she said quietly. "Very healthy." The dog glanced at her briefly, then back to the man. The vet straightened and placed her hands on the counter, not writing anything. "There's something else," she said slowly. The man felt his pulse pick up. "What?" She paused. "Not for drama. For care. Dogs can detect changes in scent," she said. "Subtle ones. Hormones. Chemistry. Sometimes changes we don't feel yet." The man felt cold creep into his chest. "You think something's wrong with me?" The vet met his eyes. "I think your dog believes something needs attention," she said gently. "And I trust him." The dog rested his head against the man's thigh. Heavy. Certain. The man closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the room felt clearer somehow, sharper edges, brighter light. "What do I do?" he asked quietly. The vet's voice stayed calm. "You listen," she said. "To him. And to your body." She smiled softly. "And we take the next step." The dog exhaled long and slow, as if a message had finally landed. The vet stood still for another moment, watching the pair. Not rushing. Taking it all in. That quiet pause wasn't hesitation. It was respect. The hospital corridor smelled different than the clinic. Cleaner. Colder. Less fur. More metal. The lights were brighter too. Unforgiving in a way the vet's office never had been. They reflected off polished floors and white walls, making everything feel exposed. The man walked slowly. The dog stayed pressed against his leg. Not pulling. Not lagging. Matching every step. At the admissions desk, the nurse smiled politely, eyes flicking down to the dog. "He can stay with you for now," she said, lowering her voice. "As long as he's calm." The dog sat immediately. Still. Focused. The man filled out forms with hands that felt slightly unsteady. He blamed the pen, the lighting, the unfamiliar chair. The dog's nose hovered near his knee the entire time. Breathing. Listening. They were led into a small exam room. A doctor entered soon after, calm, unhurried, middle-aged, with a voice that didn't rush ahead of itself. "What brings you in today?" she asked. The man opened his mouth, paused, then glanced down. "My dog," he said quietly. "He wouldn't let me ignore it." The doctor smiled, not indulgent, not dismissive. "I hear that more often than you'd think," she said. The tests began gently. Blood pressure first. The cuff tightened around his arm. The dog stiffened. The machine beeped. The doctor frowned just slightly and tried again. "Probably nothing," she said calmly. "Let's double-check." The dog leaned forward, pressing his chest against the man's knee. The second reading came back higher. The room seemed to quiet. The doctor didn't react dramatically. She simply nodded and made a note. "Any dizziness?" she asked. The man hesitated. "Some," he admitted. "Chest pressure." He nodded again. The dog let out a low, relieved sound. Not fear this time. Recognition. They ran more tests. Blood work. An EKG. The dog watched every wire placed on the man's chest, eyes tracking the doctor's hands, ears flicking at the steady beeping of the monitor. The man lay still, staring at the ceiling tiles. Each one had a faint crack, a slightly different shade of white. He focused on his breathing. The dog stood on his hind legs briefly, placing his front paws on the edge of the bed, nose hovering close to the man's chest. The nurse paused. "It's okay," the man said softly. "He does that." The nurse nodded. "I'll allow it," she said. "He seems invested." When the doctor returned, she pulled the curtain closed behind her. Not fast. Not slow. Intentional. She sat down. "At eye level. I want to be very clear," she said gently. "This isn't an emergency. But it is important." The man's stomach tightened. The dog sat directly at his side. Still. Solid. "We're seeing early signs of a cardiac issue," the doctor continued. "Subtle. Easy to miss. Especially in someone who's active and otherwise healthy." The man swallowed. "Is it serious?" "It could have become serious," she said honestly, "if ignored." She glanced down at the dog. But it wasn't. The room felt suddenly warm. The doctor went on. "Changes in blood chemistry," she explained. "Very slight rhythm irregularities. Nothing dramatic yet. But dogs can smell those changes," she said. "Sometimes long before our bodies force us to feel them." The man looked at his dog. The dog looked back. Ears relaxed now, tail resting softly on the floor. "You refused the treat," the man whispered. The dog blinked slowly. "Yes. That's not food refusal, the doctor said. That's protective behavior. He didn't want you distracted. Didn't want your body working harder than it already was. The man felt his chest tighten, not with fear, with understanding. He's been blocking me, the man said. Making me sit. Slowing me down. The doctor nodded. Reducing strain, she said. Keeping you stable. The words settled gently. Not frightening. Clarifying. So what happens now? The man asked. We treat this early, the doctor said. Medication. Monitoring. Lifestyle adjustments. Nothing overwhelming. The dog exhaled deeply. For the first time in days he lay down. Relaxed. You're lucky, the doctor added quietly. Many people don't catch this until much later. The man's throat tightened. I didn't, he said. The doctor smiled softly. But he did. They arranged follow-ups. Prescriptions. Simple instructions. As they stood to leave, the man felt steadier. Not just physically but emotionally. The dog rose too. Calm. Satisfied. In the hallway, the man crouched down and rested his forehead against the dog's. Thank you, he whispered. The dog's tail wagged once. Slow. Warm. Not excited. Complete. They walked out together. The truth wasn't frightening. It was gentle. And it had arrived exactly when it needed to. Because someone had been listening all along. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly. In routines adjusted. In pauses respected. The first morning home felt different. Not fragile, just deliberate. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft bands, landing on the floor where the dog lay stretched out beside the bed. Not blocking the doorway anymore. Not watching the walls. Resting. The man woke slowly, listening to his own breathing before he moved. It felt steadier. Not perfect but present. He sat up. The dog lifted his head immediately. Their eyes met. The dog's ears stayed relaxed. No urgency. That's new, the man murmured. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood carefully. The room stayed still. No tilt. No rush of dizziness. The dog stood too, but this time he didn't press in. He followed. Easy. Loose. In the kitchen, the man poured water first. Then coffee, half a cup instead of a full one. He moved slower now, aware of his body in a way he hadn't been before. The dog watched from a few feet away. Not guarding. Witnessing. The man took his medication with a small sip of water, then exhaled. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Approval. Later that morning they stepped outside. The air was cool, carrying the smell of damp earth and early leaves. The street was quiet. A few birds hopped along the sidewalk, pecking at something invisible. The leash hung slack between them. They walked. Not far. Not fast. The dog didn't pull ahead. Didn't lag behind. They matched each other. At the corner, the man stopped, not because the dog blocked him but because he wanted to. He rested his hands on his hips and looked up at the sky. You okay with this? He asked quietly. The dog sat. Looked up. Wagged his tail. The walk ended early and that was fine. Healing, the doctor had said, wasn't about pushing through. It was about listening. At home, the man rested on the couch with a book he didn't read. The dog curled beside him, body loose, breathing deep. His paws twitched occasionally, dreaming now instead of watching. The man noticed the change with a swell of emotion he hadn't expected. You were so tired, he whispered. The dog didn't wake. In the days that followed, they settled into a new rhythm. Follow-up appointments. Gentle check-ins. Small adjustments. The man learned the signs of his own limits. The subtle tightness. The slight fatigue that asked him to stop before it demanded. The dog no longer insisted. He trusted now. At the next vet visit, the dog accepted the treat. Slowly. Carefully. The man laughed, surprised by the sound of it. Guess you think it's okay now, he said. The dog chewed thoughtfully, then leaned into the man's leg. The veterinarian smiled. He did his job, she said. Now he gets to rest. At night, the dog returned to his bed, most of the time, But sometimes he chose the doorway anyway, not blocking it, just nearby. Old habits softened, not erased. One evening, as rain tapped lightly against the windows, the man sat on the floor beside the dog, brushing his coat. The repetitive motion was calming, the sound of bristles passing through fur steady and grounding. "You changed everything," the man said quietly. The dog turned his head and licked the man's wrist. Simple, affectionate. The man rested his forehead against the dog's shoulder. "I don't think I ever really paid attention before," he admitted, "to how closely you watch, how much you notice." The dog's breathing deepened. Outside, thunder rumbled far away, distant, not threatening. The man stayed there for a long time, listening to the storm, to the dog's steady presence beside him. Healing wasn't just medication and monitoring. It was trust rebuilt, awareness sharpened, love acknowledged. Weeks passed. The man felt stronger, clearer, not invincible but grounded. The dog played again, not wildly, but joyfully. A short burst of energy in the yard, a gentle tug on a rope toy, a relaxed sprawl in the afternoon sun. Life resumed, not as it had been, but as it needed to be. One morning, the man dropped a treat on the floor by accident. The dog sniffed it, looked up, waited. The man smiled. "Go ahead," he said. The dog took it. A crunch, a wag. Normal. The man watched him chew, heart full in a quiet, steady way. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in moments like this. In balance restored. In vigilance eased. In the knowledge that someone had stood guard when it mattered most. And would again if needed. But for now, they were simply living. Together. The season changed without asking permission. Leaves turned quietly. Mornings grew cooler. Light arrived later and lingered less. Life moved forward, steady, unremarkable in the best possible way. The man stood at the kitchen window one morning, hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching the dog in the yard. The grass was damp with dew, and the dog moved through it slowly, nose close to the ground, tail relaxed. No urgency, just curiosity. The man smiled. There had been a time when he thought love was loud, protective, obvious. He understood now that the deepest kind was quiet, watchful. The dog finished his inspection of the yard and looked up at the window. Their eyes met. The dog wagged his tail. Once, twice. Then he turned and padded back toward the door. Inside, they settled into their morning rhythm. Medication. Breakfast. A walk. Not long but intentional. The leash stayed loose. Sometimes the dog walked ahead. Sometimes he fell slightly behind. There was space now, and trust filled it naturally. As they passed neighbors on the sidewalk, the man nodded politely, exchanging small talk about weather and work. No one noticed anything remarkable. That felt right. At the park, the man sat on a bench and watched the dog sniff fallen leaves, pausing at every new scent. Sunlight filtered through bare branches, dappling the ground with soft gold. "You know," the man said aloud, mostly to himself, "I thought I was taking care of you." The dog glanced back, ears perked. The man laughed quietly. "Guess we had that backwards for a while." The dog trotted back and sat at his feet, leaning lightly against his leg. Not pressing, just touching. The contact felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Clear. Complete. Later that week, the man stood in the kitchen preparing dinner. He moved with ease now, unafraid of sudden dizziness, no longer scanning his body for warning signs. Awareness remained, but it wasn't fear anymore. The dog lay nearby, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed. At some point, the man dropped a piece of food. It hit the floor with a soft tap. The dog didn't move. The man paused, then smiled. "Still working?" he asked gently. The dog's tail thumped once. The man picked it up and placed it in the bowl instead. Dinner was quiet, comfortable. That night, as rain whispered against the windows again, the man sat on the couch, flipping through an old photo album. Pictures from years past. Hikes, road trips, lazy afternoons. The dog appeared in nearly every one. Sometimes in focus, sometimes blurred at the edge of the frame. Always there. You were paying attention long before I was, the man said softly. The dog lifted his head and rested it on the man's knee. The weight was familiar, reassuring. The man closed the album and rested his hand on the dog's neck, feeling the steady warmth beneath his palm. His heart beat evenly now, a rhythm he no longer took for granted. I promise, he said quietly, I'll listen better. The dog's breathing slowed. Deep. Content. They went to bed later than usual. The dog paused at his bed in the corner of the room, then chose to lie beside the man's bed instead. Not blocking the doorway. Just close. The man noticed. Didn't comment. Some habits, he understood now, weren't meant to disappear completely. They were reminders. Of devotion. Of instinct. Of love expressed through vigilance. Weeks turned into months. Appointments became routine check-ins. Numbers improved. Conversations shifted from caution to maintenance. The man grew stronger, not just in body but in awareness. He noticed things now. The way his dog's ears shifted when something was off. The subtle cues he'd once overlooked. He responded differently. Listened sooner. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch together, the man watched the sun dip low, turning the sky orange and pink. The dog lay stretched out beside him, eyes half closed, chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The man rested his hand on the dog's side. Whatever comes next, he said softly, we do it together. The dog opened one eye, looked at him, then closed it again. Agreement without ceremony. The bond between them hadn't changed in some dramatic way. It had deepened, refined itself. What had once been assumed was now understood. This wasn't just companionship. It was partnership, care flowing both ways. And as the evening settled in, quiet and complete, the man felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for the scare, not for the fear, but for the chance to truly see what had been beside him all along. A guardian who asked for nothing. A protector who spoke without words. A friend who knew when to refuse a treat, and when to save a life.